Our class is focused primarily just on college success. However, college is often the beginning of when you start figuring out what you want your life to look like and you start actually planning for that life. So this lecture is really focused on big picture life planning and creating strategies so that you can get towards that. We've talked about goal setting and objectives in a more small way, but this is sort of taking a step back and looking at it in a big picture. This lecture is very activity based, so I'm actually going to be having you answering questions, writing things down pretty much the whole time. So make sure you have several pieces of paper available and a pen or a pencil, and you're likely going to want to pause the video as we go throughout because this is a very hands-on lecture. So hopefully these tools and activities will help you create a plan for the life you want and help you reach it through that planning. A quick housekeeping item, you are going to be asked to complete a course evaluation where you're going to be able to rate the class as well as the instructor and organization of the class. So if you could take the time to please print out the course and instructor evaluation from Canvas. It's available under week 8 online, and you're going to fill it out with a pen or a pencil and then bring it in on the day of the final and submit it. So please take the time to do this, and then we'll move on to the lecture itself. Life planning isn't easy. A lot of people live their whole lives without actually thinking about what they want, and they just kind of go through the motions based on what's expected of them. There are certain characteristics and behaviors of people who are successful in planning out their lives, and I've listed some of these here. So successful students are really focused on inner motivation, or as we've talked a little bit about, intrinsic motivation. So basically you're finding what motivates you and you take actions based on that, and it's things that come from within versus external rewards like grades. You're really thinking about, okay, well, I really want to learn about this, or I really want to grow in this area, and that is completely intrinsic motivation. And this really helps students work and persist towards goals and dreams because people will come up against obstacles. Things are hard sometimes, and having intrinsic motivation makes it so you really will get there easier. Whereas on the other hand, if you have a little sense of passion or drive, it often leads to quitting when you come up against an obstacle. Successful students design a compelling life plan. So you actually think about what you want your life to look like, and you create a design. And this may change as you grow and as you learn more, but it's something that you actually have in front of you that you can think about and look back on and judge whether or not you're meeting that expectation for yourself. Struggling students, on the other hand, tend to invent their lives as they live them. Things change as they go. They don't really think about what they want, and they just take it as it comes. It's not to say that a successful student can't be flexible with life changes, but they actually have an idea of where they're headed, versus a struggling student just doesn't really even ever think about that. Successful students commit to their goals and dreams. So they really visualize their ideal future, and they take the action and take the time and make the effort to work towards it. And they pick their activities based on what they know about themselves, their values, their goals, their interests, right? All the things we learned in this class. And then they move forward with a very specific path. Remember, plant happenstance can come into this, where sometimes it's not always planned exactly what you're going to do, but you do assess each activity opportunity based on what you know about yourself and what your life plan is. Versus students who are struggling, they tend to wander aimlessly from one activity to another without actually thinking about how this relates to what they want in life and their interests, values, and goals. And so they often end up not doing activities, or doing ones that aren't really related, they might not really like, or they might just feel like they're checking boxes instead of being really honest about what they want. So this relates to this idea of being a creator of your life, actually being the designer, and being in charge and taking responsibility for how your life is going to look instead of being a victim. So we have a little activity with this. I want you to think about whether each of these statements would be somebody who's a victim or somebody who's a creator of their life. So I'll pause after each statement comes up, and then I'll give you the answer. This grade is so unfair. So would this be a victim or creator? This would be a victim because the student is not thinking about what actions went into the grade and really are blaming it on someone else. And if something is unfair about the grading, you can approach your instructor and say, this is what I think is unfair, and then you can talk to them about it, and that would be more of a creator. But most of the time, grades are fair, and folks who are victims tend to want to blame someone besides themselves. I'm going to meet with the instructor to find out how to improve. So this would be a creator. This person is taking action based on potentially a previous failure to find out exactly what they can do to make sure this failure doesn't happen again. I'm never going to pass this course. So that's a victim. So that's a person who's making everything permanent and pervasive. Remember we talked about learned optimism. So they're saying, I'm never going to pass this course. And that can sometimes become a truth if they actually don't put the effort in, right? If they think they're not going to pass and they don't put the effort in. So that's, not a very good way of thinking about it. I might as well drop out of college. Victim. So again, this is sort of this everything's horrible thing. Sometimes when you come up against a setback, it is tempting to say, I'm a failure. Overall, I'm a failure and I'm never going to be successful. But the truth is, everybody makes mistakes. Everybody fails sometimes. So you want to think about, okay, well, what can I do to make college work for me instead of, I'm just going to drop out. I'm going to start a study team and go to the tutoring center. This is a creator. So somebody who is saying, okay, well, I might be struggling, but I can do some things to make this work for me. And finally, I'll list at least 3 lessons I can learn from this experience. So this is a creator. This is somebody who's looking at setbacks and saying, well, what can I learn from these to make the future better? And that's a very, very good practice to put into play. So what I challenge you all to do is to try and think about your setbacks in a creator way instead of a victim way so that you can actually get more out of your experience as a college student. So I have another activity for you. I'd like you to get out a piece of paper and you're going to answer some questions that will really help you think about what your life is like now, and these questions will let you think about what you want your life to look like. So I think a lot of people don't ever really think much about their life. As I said before, people tend to go through the motions and do what's expected of them because that is easy. And this kind of forces you to think about where you are right now and where you want to be. So how would you rate your life? You can use a scale of 1 to 10, or you can just say, great or not so great. Really kind of how would you overall give it a score, essentially. And I want you to look at what's happening in your life right now, and this can relate back to that overall rating of your life. How is your emotional well-being, your career, your relationships, your education, your finances, and really think about all of those things. What is happening with all of those in your life? And there are other things, obviously, that you can add into there. What makes you happy? A lot of people don't even think about this. What are the things that actually make me happy on a day-to-day basis? You're going to probably want to spend a little bit of time thinking about this. It's not an easy answer, but it's important to identify these things because they can help you in making decisions and allocating time and thinking about where you want to go because you want to allow for things that make you happy. What are the things in your life draining your energy and happiness? So what are those things that are fighting against your happiness, essentially? And what isn't working? In addition to things that are draining your energy, what are the obstacles that are getting in your way to your own fulfillment and happiness? What would your ideal life look like? If you could close your eyes and imagine exactly what your life would look like in the most ideal, right, based on the things that make you happy, what would it look like? And I want you to really think about, the true things that make you happy. So that would relate better to an ideal than something that some other person has created as an ideal. We see a lot of cultural ideals put forward based on, advertising and social media. And some of those might be accurate for you, but some of them might not. But it's tempting to sometimes choose those because that's what we're told the ideal life is. But I want you to think about what actually makes you happy and integrate that into your image of an ideal life. And then finally, think about what you need to do to get that life. And some goals are much harder to attain, but there are simple things we can do every day to be happier and to reach our ideal life. So think about some actual actions you can take. Another thing that's important to consider when we are evaluating our current life and thinking about what our future life will look like and what we want it to look like is what roles we play. And we all play a lot of roles. So we talked a little bit about identity with diversity and identity, and we have many forms of identity. But roles are things that we sort of act in, things that we do. It's not necessarily internal identity, but it can be. So you can identify, for instance, as an artist, but you're also working or acting as an artist. So it's really about day-to-day behaviors and actions. So you can be both a sister, a mother, a student, and a leader. You can be a father, an entrepreneur, and an employee. And all of these roles are there for us, sort of layered on top of each other, and at certain times of the day or certain times of the week might take precedence. But I want you to sit down and write down all the roles that you have in your life. Then what I want you to do with those roles that you've written down is I want you to do a pie chart. So draw a big circle and then think about the amount of time per week or per day or per month, whatever's easier for you to sort of establish this, because some roles might only come up once a month or something like that. And think about how big of a piece of the pie is each role in terms of time. So we've talked about values and time before, and this is looking at in a bigger way in terms of your roles. And if you look at it and it doesn't really align with what roles you like doing or what roles are important to you, then you want to think about what adjustments you're going to want to make. What is most important to you? Which of those roles is most connected to your life fulfillment and happiness? And ideally, you'd be spending more time with that role than the other ones that are less important to you. It's also important to think about what the purpose for each of your roles is. So what do you have in terms of a life goal or life purpose for your role as a mother? You want to raise, healthy, adjusted children who can get the most out of their education, for example. Or as an employee, you want to add to the organization by reaching out to people in order to help them. So think about what the purposes are for each of your roles, because that'll also help you act in that way when you are in that role at whatever time in the day or the week or the month. So roles and activities and behaviors are something that, again, we don't always think about, and sometimes we're forced to spend more time on a role we're not as interested in as others, but we really can take action to make this different. And I think sometimes stepping way back and thinking about what impact we want to make with our life can help us really establish our approach to these roles and the time we spend on these roles in a very sort of powerful way. So this is a bit of a macabre or a little bit depressing activity maybe, but it really can be very helpful for you to think back on that as sort of a touchstone every time you might be pushed or influenced to do a role that is not as important at the expense of one that is. So I want you to think about what you want other people to say at your funeral. And again, I know that's a little depressing, but that really helps you think about what impact you want to make. Who's there, right? Who's at your funeral, and what would they say if you passed away today? And so this is sort of helping you think about, okay, well, I would want people to say that I was a very dedicated friend and family member, but if I look at my pie chart, it looks like I'm spending very little time with my friends, and I need to adjust that because it doesn't align with what I want people to remember about me or the impact I want to make. So it's actually a very powerful activity. So take a little bit of time to do this, to look at your pie chart, and if you identify dissonance, i.e. a difference between what you want people to say at your funeral and the pie chart you have and the pie chart you want to have, see what kind of action steps you can take to resolve this. Maybe you are working a lot of overtime. Maybe you could look at reducing your daily budget so that you don't have to work overtime, so that you can spend more time with your kid or your family or your friends. So that's just an example, but I want you to think about what action steps would work for you. Another thing you can do to help you really stay on track with your goals and to get a very visual image of where you want to be is to create a vision board. And there's a lot of research on vision boards. They're actually pretty powerful because it's right there and you see it every day. And for those of us who are very visual, it can be helpful. So go through magazines or the internet and find clippings and images and quotes of things that represent where you want to be in your life, what you want to achieve, who you want to become, or the experience you want to be having. And you may want to put this up on a board. You may want to have it framed and at the very least have it available for you, easy to see in your home or your office or wherever you see it on a daily basis. And it will allow you to sort of remember the things you're trying to go for. And again, it'll help you make these choices about, okay, well, I'm going to spend time watching Netflix, or should I call my grandma? Which one is more related to the vision of the life I want to have? Another good activity for you in life planning is to write down a bucket list. So a bucket list is a number of experiences or achievements that a person hopes to have or accomplish during their lifetime. In other words, it's things you want to do before you die or kick the bucket. And this can be fun things like going on a trip to Costa Rica and swimming with dolphins, but it can also be impacts that you want to have, on your family, your friends, the general population, through your work, through volunteering, and think about these big goals that you want to reach. And again, I've said several times, but writing down your goals makes it more likely that you achieve them. So what are these things you want to do before you die? And it'll motivate you to work towards them. A more focused goal setting activity you can do is to choose a yearly North Star. So as many of you may know, the North Star is used as a navigational tool for travelers or sailors. So it's this point that people see when they're traveling to sort of know they're going north. So the idea of making your own North Star is, what is your goal for the year? What is the thing you're reaching towards and working towards for the year? So decide on that North Star for the year and create a list of big goals you would like to achieve along the way so that you can get to that North Star. You may want to set a goal that may sound too big and that may be even too big for more than 1 year. And you want to have an emotional reaction when you write down this goal. And this crazy dream will allow you to really make decisions in your year and plan and in the upcoming months sort of set goals. And you can ask yourself on a regular basis, are my daily choices leading me towards this goal or farther away from this goal? And it can help you kind of remind yourself, okay, I really want to write a book in a year, for example, and I have a choice right now to play around on my phone or to write a couple paragraphs for my book or an intro or an outline or do some research. And you can ask yourself, well, is this action working towards my North Star for the year or is it not? And then you make a choice based on that. Another way to think about life planning is to think about what works, when life works. And I really like this infographic. It has this base, it's very basic, but it kind of gives you this idea of, okay, well, if things aren't working, something's got to change. But it's important to think about what is working in your life. So write down, what activities do you love? What attributes do you value? And that's attributes in yourself, like things about yourself that you value, but also other people. You really value truth, or you value somebody else's ability to talk to anyone. What are these things that you really value that work in life? Characteristics about yourself that you're proud of. It's really important to do this. I think a lot of us don't ever think about what's great about ourselves, and it's really hard to do. I know I struggle with it sometimes, but you want to think about what are these characteristics that you like and help build on those, and then potentially those can lead to paths that you take in your life. If you really like about yourself that you are great at connecting with people who are struggling in their life, this may lead you to look into a career where you're helping people on a daily basis, maybe doing counseling or something like that. And then think about things that remind you what life looks like when it's going well, right? So what does life look like when it's going well? Are you with your family? Are you, doing work that is interesting? And it can kind of remind you what you're going for, because I think when people are suffering or struggling, particularly if you have maybe anxiety or depression, it's hard to remember what life is like when it's good. And knowing that and remembering that can really help you move towards that. And then in a very practical sense, scheduling some of these things into your calendar, what the things that work, the activities you love, will keep you going, because sometimes we have to work, right? You may not love doing your math homework, but if you know you have some of the things that you love about life scheduled, it can make those things easier. So many of the activities and thought exercises that we've done really can culminate in writing your statement of purpose. And this comes also from some of the things we talked about earlier in the semester, like values and goal setting and objectives. And this is sort of your big life goal. So you might have seen for companies, they'll have a mission statement, which is what their company is all about, the whole purpose of their company. And this is sort of, what are you all about? What is your purpose in life? So you want to think about first who you are, and not just I am Ashley and I live in Sacramento. You want to think about really who you are as a person. I'm a person who cares deeply about animals. I'm a person who cares about making an impact on other people. Then you want to think about why you're here, and this can be your mission, right? What were you born to do? What makes you feel alive? What is what you want to be remembered for? What is the impact you want to make? And then that can sort of be supported by the vision of that. So your vision is, what does the actual accomplishment of your mission look like? So what does this actually show up as in the world? And what do you do to employ that mission, right? What are the actual things you do? Values. What characteristics do you value the most? And we've talked about values, so this can really kind of come up, and this will inform your mission. So if you really want to help other people, but one of your top values is freedom, you're going to want to do it in a way that allows you some freedom and maybe helps other people have freedom in their life. So that's a high value for you. And finally, what are the specific objectives, and strategies that you're going to put into place in order to accomplish these goals, and what's the timeline? So this kind of takes us back to that early lecture on goal setting and objectives and decision making, and this will really help you establish this last piece, which is the goals. But first, you want to think about the mission. What do you want to do overall with your life? So here's an example of a purpose statement. So first, they say who they are. I'm a vivacious environmentalist. Vivacious meaning outgoing. So they are a person who really cares about the environment. They want to be a spokesperson for wildlife issues and help people connect their daily actions to saving the wildlife on this planet. So that's a big life's purpose, to really be this protector of wildlife and help save them on this planet. The vision of what that actually look like is that in their life, they want there to be a measurable increase in people's involvement in wildlife protection activities and a 3% increase in local wildlife populations through their actions. And that's a big one. That's a big vision, but you want to reach for that. And if that's the impact you want to make, it's good to be ambitious. What are the values that come up related to this mission? I most value the education of the population towards sustainable and ecologically friendly practices. And this is very focused on the mission, but they could also include things like, I value interaction with people, which is why education is something that comes up as a value for them. Now you have to do a little work. What specific goals and action items do you think that this particular person can put into play in working towards their overall purpose in life? So this is practice, so you can work on somebody else before you work on yourself, because it is harder to work on yourself. So think about what exactly this person could do, and use what you learned from our goal setting and objective making lecture several weeks ago, and really think about helping them make, DAPS goals and SMART objectives, and then you'll have the tools to be able to do that with yourself. So take some time to do that, and then use these things to help you create a purpose statement in your life and create meaning, fulfillment, and reach after a life that really is what you want, instead of just going through the motions and waking up when you're 40 and going, how did I get here, right? If you start thinking about these things now and revising them as needed, you'll know that you're always reaching towards your purpose and something that means something to you.